So, hello and welcome everybody to season 8 of the Mundane to Magical online summit series. My name is Louise Matson. As always, I am truly blessed to be your host. And today I'm really excited to welcome back to the summit a wonderful returning speaker, Davyd Farrell. Davyd wowed us all last season with his immense knowledge of working with the plant kingdom and his passion when sharing this wisdom that the plants wish to share with us. Davyd is a plant shaman who comes from an Irish Cornish background, and his Celtic roots form a really strong part of his healing and shamanic practices. He's trained as a plant spirit healer, crystal healer, geomancer, and new mysteries initiate. And he's also been initiated into a long lineage of Quechua tabaqueros from the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest. He spent 3 years in India and Italy studying Tibetan Buddhism, quite deeply in semi-monastic centres, and has taken teachings and empowerments from the Dalai Lama and Dagri Rinpoche, as well as many other lamas and Rinpoches. He brings all of those different modalities into his teaching and healing and works a lot with his ancient ancestors in the land. And he co-founded the groundbreaking events Gateways of the Mind, Plant Consciousness and the Shamanic Lands, as well as co-founding the online TV platform wisdomhub.tv, where he is the lead interviewer and curator. He now resides in Mexico, lucky old you, and offers quantum remote healing and occasionally runs plant medicine retreats working with various sacred plants, cacti and fungi. Now, the topic of the conversation today is along the lines of the magic of plant spirit healing, an introduction to elder. And the title suggests that we're just going to focus on elder, but Davyd is also going to share the recent immersions that he's completed with the dandelion and artemisia plant families, as these have really kind of led the way to the time that we're all experiencing now with this Scorpio season. And they also have some really powerful wisdom to share too. Now, Davyd had originally planned to provide a discount code for the Elder Immersion, but the Elder Immersion's already started, so it's unfortunately not able to happen. So I'm sorry that some of the emails have said that that was the case. And as always with these live calls, there's an opportunity to ask questions with the chat and with the Q&A options on Zoom. So please feel free to ask throughout and I'll work the questions into the conversation. So let's begin. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you back to the show, Davyd.
Thank you, Lou, and hi to everybody. It's great to be back. I really enjoyed the last conversation, and nice to sometimes be on the other side of the table, so to speak. I am aware that the internet is a little unstable and might glitch and drop. It's been a pretty strong theme for the last few weeks, as I'm sure Lou will testify to, and pretty much everyone else who's had to use Zoom for work. So I put some nice big prayers out to the internet fairies, and I'm hoping that the call is going to hold. So let's all hold that space together. But yeah, thank you for inviting me back to your Mundane to Magic Summit, Louise. I really enjoyed it last time, and yeah, we have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to try and weave in some themes of the plants we've been working with in the immersions, but also, as you alluded to at the beginning, it's Scorpio season. It's a little wild out there, and there's a lot of clearing going on. I think for a lot of people, a lot of stuff coming from here. I think a lot of grief is starting to come out, and probably going to touch on that a little bit too. Also, throat chakra stuff is getting a little hammered. Mine certainly is a little scratchy as well, so I totally empathize on that one. So where would you like us to start today, Louise? What would you like us to start with?
Well, let's just kind of have a little bit of a rundown on what a plant immersion is, for those people who aren't used to working in that way, and also how it benefits us to work in such a way with the plant kingdom. And I will just share that I have the elder essence.
Good.
I've also got elderberry syrup, and I've got dried elderberries, organic elderberries as well, that I'm currently working with. So yeah, I'm excited for you to share what elder wisdom is, but yeah, just what immersions are, how they benefit us, and that the journey that you've already been on leading up to this point.
Right, so yeah, without wanting to necessarily repeat too much of what we talked about in the previous interview, because I think there's a lot of good foundational stuff there. When I was down in the Amazon with my teacher Kuri Kindi, working in the Quechua way with tobacco and Wayusa and especially ayahuasca, We went through a series of sort of processes you could call like dietas, plant dietas. It's a very strong part of Amazonian plant shamanism. And one of my teachers, Carol Guyett, who's written a really great book called Sacred Plant Initiations. She was my teacher for several years, well, many moons ago now. And she was also, along with Pam Montgomery, one of my other teachers who's written retreats. And those really kind of utilize the same methodology of plant diets from South America, which ordinarily would be where the apprentice and the maestro go into the jungle and open a container for normally could be 10 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. The time frame is really up to the maestro and the apprentice. And then the space would be opened with a ceremony normally of ayahuasca, and then the apprentice goes into a jungle really just to sit in the hut, eat very simple food, normally rice, plantain, water. And the idea is to empty out the system completely clear the terrain of all, foods and toxicants, and then working with another plant. It could be bobinsana or sananga or many plants, in fact, so many different ones. They then start to imbibe a different kind of a brew, and they drink that every day. And it's really just a case of sitting, being alone, meditating in the jungle with no distractions, not even food distractions, and allowing the plant intelligence or the plant spirit of the plant that's being worked with to come fully into the field to communicate with the apprentice. Really powerful stuff. Did quite a lot of it in the jungle with tobacco. Drinking tobacco is a challenging experience, as anyone who's ever done it will testify to, but it really does clean you out. Mostly tobacco ceremonies involve a lot of nausea and feeling sick, and hopefully at some point being sick, because otherwise it's not so pleasant. But it's kind of interesting as well, as we're coming into this Scorpio season, just to kind of look forwards to Elder, about purging. And I'm going to draw some links to ayahuasca and Elder in a little bit, because that's something, as you might have already seen in the discussion with Pete in the immersion, we were alluding to, that these powerful medicines that have a connection. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So those that kind of methodology that Carol and Pam were bringing through, then started running a lot of retreats like that in the past under the Plant Consciousness banner, and got to sit with Pam, particularly over many years, running retreats with hawthorn and yarrow and mugwort and dandelion and nettle, and I've lost count of how many plants. So that got me into the mindset personally of how to make essences, how to make medicines, how to empower myself to work with those plants by myself in a sort of dietary space, sometimes very strictly, like in the jungle. So I'm trying to protocol maybe 3 weeks with a new essence, and I've learned how to feel the plants coming into my terrain or into my energy field. And as a consequence, what that's allowed me to do is to get, how to say, anchors, or I like to think there's a bit like getting a telephone number, to be honest, with a new friend. Getting the telephone number of hawthorn or dandelion, so that when I want to work with them, I can call them up and say, hey, you want to come in, you want to work with me, let's do something. So whether that's for my own personal processes or manifestations or prayer setting, or probably more often it's when I'm in a clearing space for clients. So those plant diets, or what we've now at Quantum Plant Healing evolved into the plant immersions, which is a different but same kind of concept, which I'll talk about in a minute, is really creating a space where we are inviting in the higher intelligence, the quantum intelligence of a plant. And what many of us have realized, and many more are realizing very quickly, is that these plants not just something that grows outside like a dandelion in the cracks, but behind powerful spiritual being. In the case of dandelion, we came to realize that he's really a powerful being from Sirius. We're now in the process with Elder, and we're starting to understand that maybe Elder is one of the Palladian mothers, the starseed mothers. So these are powerful beings that have been here on the planet a long time, and now they're really stepping up to show us who they really are, so that they can help us see who we really are. Which I think is a big part of what the Elder immersion is about. Because, as one of my teachers once said, there are two big questions for humans. The first one is, who am I? And the second one is, why am I here? Right? If you don't have the answers to those two questions, I feel like maybe you're missing a big piece of the puzzle about why your soul signed up to this experiment that we've been involved in for a while, and hopefully is now coming to a conclusion, so that we can be involved in a much more creative process or experiment. So that's a little background. And so that kind of methodology from the Amazon was then brought forward by Pam and Carol, and then developed more. And now with myself and my partner Bella, we've developed quantum plant healing. And this came through dandelion. And I also have to put credit where credit's due. Zach, the Ascended Master, as channeled by my friend Janet Trelawa, he's had his fingerprints all over this one. I now come to realize sometime down the track that him and Dandelion were in cahoots all the way through. Also, I came to realize that Zach and David down here in Soup just came to the party late, apparently, and was giving instructions at the last minute. So Dandelion posited this idea of a global plant immersion online way back at the beginning of the year, in sort of January, February time. And the idea gathered some pace, and I could see how it could come together. But at the time I was living in the middle of nowhere in high plateau state of Hidalgo in central Mexico. Internet was virtually non-existent. And I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. Running an online immersion with an internet that's probably worse than a dial-up from the early 90s. So it didn't make an awful lot of sense. But the idea stuck with me, and some months later again re-emerged, probably somewhere, I guess, around June or July time. And suddenly the impetus was there. And not only did Dandelion present himself as the first immersion, there was also a sequence of Dandelion, then Artemisia, then Elder, and then you. Couldn't quite see exactly why those plants, but I've worked with all of them before. As you said at the beginning, I also spent 5 years studying with Michael Dunning in the U mysteries, and so initiated into that whole lineage of the U, which is really powerful. Spent many years working with Elder, or the Elder Mother, who we're now doing an immersion with. But most of all, the Artemisias are really my kind of witch plant sister family, really. And so it was a real pleasure to be able to go back into a much more expansive space with those guys and do the Artemisia immersion, which concluded over the September period. But to look back to the beginning of why these immersions and how, so I have to be honest, I was never really in favor of doing a global online plant retreat or immersion. I couldn't see how it was going to work. I didn't like the idea of sharing plant magic or information through the internet for a whole bunch of reasons. And also wasn't really sure what I wanted to share from the plants. I kind of went through a bit of a creative, I wouldn't say drought over the winter, but I definitely understood from the plants that whatever had been taught before was going to evolve into something different. And there was an in-between space, which really was when the dandelion immersion started to formulate more strongly. And as the process sort of unfolded and I sat and meditated, took a lot of dandelion medicine, took a lot of dandelion essence, even worked with the sacred fungi and a few other powerful plant medicines to really go, okay, like, what's this all about? How do you want this to happen? And what Dandelion's first lesson was, is like, first of all, get out of the way of yourself and allow this to manifest in the way that I want. I'm like, okay, I can do that. And from that point forwards, what was really interesting was I have got very many incredibly intelligent, erudite friends who work in different traditions. And some of them have been my friends for years and have been trying to cajole some of them, like Emily and Sandy and even Pete, into doing different talks with a podcast or whatever. And suddenly it was like, it became very clear. It's like, we can do something here as a crew, as a tribe even. And that started to form by itself. And that's when the idea of the transmission started to come through. Plus, of course, many people, I think, including yourself, had seen me doing the pieces with Pam Gregory, which really were life-changing for me. It's a huge debt of gratitude to Pam for those. And information around the YouTube channel, around the podcast. And so what's been really beautiful is seeing how like-minded people have been drawn by the frequency of the transmissions and the podcasts that myself and my friends have been putting out. That's kind of satisfying. Plus, it's a way that we get to say what we think. We've been banned a few times on YouTube for sailing a bit too close to the wind, particularly myself and Pete. But, it's important at this time that our throat chakra is not getting blocked and that we can start to speak our truth. And you do have to be careful which truths you speak on YouTube, because my truth doesn't match YouTube's clearly, as I'm sure it doesn't for quite a few people right now. But if you're clever, and again, I have to really doff my cap to Pam on this one, we can find ways to communicate what we want to say without actually having to use the word.
Absolutely.
And I think that this is also a part of breaking the spells that have been cast on us, the spells of silence, particularly, the spells of shunning. And also, I think for many of us in this work, there is a very strong loop back to previous ages where us witches and wizards and shamans and medicine people were shunned, shamed, and worse. And I think many of us are now releasing that feeling of being persecuted, having to hide, not being able to speak up. And I think sometimes the work that we do on the YouTube channels, I know with many people, is very much basically, corners where we can't speak. So I just heard quite a bit there. You want to jump in?
You just cut out there. I thought that's really classic. It's like, the energies that still dominate are kind of messing with the whole being able to speak freely. One of the things that you said was that things are coming, whatever it is, whatever energies we've been working with previously, are kind of like the message is slightly shifting, the wisdom is slightly changing. It's kind of, we're getting new stuff in about kind of really old energies, connections that we've had previously. And I really do feel that, and I noticed that a lot. It's kind of like all of the teachings are getting an upgrade. All of the kind of, if it's dogmatic, then it's old paradigm kind of thing, because there are no rules anymore. There's no instruction book. It's like, just go with the connection and go with what you're getting now, and really trust in that, because everything is shifting and more information is coming through, which is completely new, because I don't think we were ready to hold the vibration, that information previously. So
I totally agree. And there's so many ways that I'm seeing this. And again, myself and Pete on the Elder Immersion really go into this when we're talking about the magic of Elder. So I'm just going to maybe share a little bit about that, because it's so pertinent right now. So I've been showing this with everybody because I still find it mind-blowing. But one of the things that Pete was sharing this with is that the Elder tree, or the medicine of Elder, is an immunomodulator. And what that means at the more sort of phytochemistry level is that the medicine is able to come into our body and actually communicate in some sort of conversation, intelligent conversation with our body, and work out what needs to be fixed. Now, this information is not particularly new. It's been around for probably several decades. But what I'm now realizing is, like, hold on a second, why are we not completely mind blown by this information? What can come into my system, have a conversation with it in a sympathetic way and go, okay, you need to fix this, and we need to purge this out, or that needs to come out. And it's not like this is where I think plant medicine is very different from laboratory medicine. In the laboratory medicine is made to do a specific thing. We can debate whatever that might be in some cases, but that's all it can do. Plant medicine is an intelligence that communicates with our own body medicine and body intelligence, or in a quantum world. And I feel that what's happening now is that this is, again, not new information. It's been around forever, and our ancestors were already very much into a quantum plant space. But over the last several thousand years, when the energy of the last age, or the last yuga, has got very dense, we've also been subjected to huge overlays of magic, technology, and more, all of which was hidden from us and keeping us stupid, really, in many ways, or keeping us dumbed down. And what I've seen over the last few months is that those nets, or the matrices, or however you want to call them, have been taken down. The first one that had to come down was the matrix. The second one that had to come down was the colonial inverted black magic power that was being wielded by various monarchical organizations. That now has gone to, and we can see had all over the world, and the lifting of that with the passing of that particular individual, we can now see that the hierarchical, abusive monarchical systems are about to collapse. So for the first time, those oppressive organizations, institutions, are now no longer there. So we're much more able to step up and receive the light and information that's coming at us from many different directions, from the cosmos, from the higher beings, from the plants, from Mother Earth. And maybe for the first time, we're in a space, even though we're under this incredibly intense duress right now. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about the toxicity that's coming at us in a minute. But for the first time, I feel that even though we're going through that, we have the potential, if you want to really clean up, get centered, get realigned, and be able to receive. And that's where the immersions came in. I mean, without wanting to paraphrase a 3-week process with Dandelion into two short words, what Dandelion really gave certainly us at the Quantum Plant Healing team, but also many of the immersion attendees, was this sense of being centered here, being absolutely present in the moment, the present moment, because that's the only thing that truly exists. And when we're in that moment, we can start to connect to our royal, noble, leonine heart, because dandelion is very much connected to the big cats, the Leo. And when we're connected here, we can connect to here, which is our higher mind, our unconditional space of love, or non-dualistic mind. But in order to do that well, is not being distorted or obscurated or manipulated by unhelpful frequencies, attachments, programming, distortions. The list is almost endless. And I'm sure the more I talk about this, the internet's going to play with us, because every time I get into this is what happens. So please, do bear with us if the connection drops, because it's, I think, a big part of what is going on right now. There's definitely a lot of distorting frequencies coming from many spaces. So I know many of us who are doing this work with the Zooms and the live calls, we are really up against it. So again, thank you, Lou, for putting yourself out there and doing a whole summit, because I know right now how difficult that is. So bless you. So really, after Dandelion got us into our hearts and got us centered and made us very aware of the present moment, what Dandelion also does is starts to show us synchronicities very succinctly. And it's like, if you're in the present moment with more clarity, then you start to see everything around you differently. You start to see the small details. And that's when Dandelion can really get to work. So, okay, did you see that? Did you see what I did there? Did you see how that linked? Why is your mind like 3 weeks in the future? Be present, be here right now, because otherwise you would have just missed that if I hadn't pointed it out to you. So Dandelion is a real cheerful fellow who really, I think, is a great gateway into this work, because if we're not present and if we're not in our hearts, working with quantum plant intelligence is going to be a little difficult, because if we're all up here in our lower monkey mind and trying to imagine things and forcing it from there, the plants can't speak to us. They can only speak through that beautiful green energy that comes in through the heart space. So Dandelion, first and foremost, was about that. The Artemisias, as Zach very beautifully pointed out in one of the streams I did with him, it's like, well, they're a little more challenging. And I think many people got this with the Artemisias. It's like, well, the Artemisias, everyone thinks, oh, they're beautiful plants, Lady Mugwort's a little bit witchy. And it's just like, that's part of their disguise. Because the moment you invite them in, they're like, boom, we're going to whack you in the face, take you apart, show you where you've still got shadow that needs to be illuminated. And while you're still working out what the hell happened, we're going to make sure that it's all released before you even really realized what happened. That's a very, very direct style of healing that the Artemisia specialize in. It's also the way I find the angelic beings tend to work. It's like, we're going to make this short, sharp, and possibly a little bit painful, but then it's going to be a lot of really amazing stuff afterwards. But the Artemisias really require us to step up and be brave, look at our shadow, look where our terrain is not clean and clear, because if it's not clean and clear and we want to start making big prayers, and if we've got distortions coming in, those prayers are going to get distorted as well. And right now we're trying to create in our own energetic womb spaces our own personal and collective visions of New Earth. And what I can see is that there are some really beautiful visions of New Earth coming out, and I can also see lots of old paradigm distortions creeping in too. Because one of the things that we have to learn to ascend to that more non-dual space is letting go and surrendering and not being attached. Not being attached to our bank balances, not being attached to our careers, our persona, our car, our holidays, our pub life, whatever it might be, all of which lockdown was very good at taking away from us. And actually, again, being more in a non-dual mind, we can start to say thank you very much for that opportunity, because what it really did for many of us, as I know we've talked about before, is straightened out a lot of stuff in our life that wasn't serving us anymore, and also created that space for us to start seeing the distractions and the attachments that we all had. Unfortunately, many people I perceive did not necessarily take that opportunity and probably had a lot of takeaway pizza and watched Netflix throughout most of lockdown. Some of us decided to go into the forest and do a lot of plant medicine and ask what the hell is going on, which is pretty much what I did and how I've come to understand so many things. But now that we're moving into the elder season, which is Scorpio season, I know you also have Scorpio rising, right? So, and I'm Scorpio sun sign, so we have some of these energies ourselves. But Scorpio is often about revealing the unseen, illuminating the shadow. It's also about sex, death, and magic. That's what Scorpios are known for. And we often joke, if you're lucky, all three at once. But, all joking aside, this is death and rebirth season. And Samhain and even Day of the Dead here in Mexico is where we sit at that very thin point of the veil where the world of the ancestors, the other world, the world of those that have passed, and the world of the living in this realm are very much close to each other. So what we understand with the timing of this elder immersion from Elder is that this is a big process of death and rebirth. Death of the old paradigm, death of the old distorted versions of, and this is a time when
you just cut out again.
I know, I can see it happening. So I was just saying, I'll repeat what I said. So for those that weren't able to catch that, this is a time when we can see that with the elder energy that we're being encouraged to go through some kind of death process. Hopefully not actually physically, because that wouldn't be so great. But, and I think it's frozen. Am I still with you, Lou? It's dropping. I can see it's glitching.
Still there.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we're being encouraged, I feel, to really break down our sense of self and see what is the hidden gem that's actually beneath all of that clogging, that dirt and yuck. And this is one of the beautiful things I often share about doing the clearings for people, is that I get to see, first of all, when the client comes into my space, because I work in the astral and quantum space with the clients, and I know you do similar work too, is we get to see, often the field is clogged, there's fog, there's gunk, there's yuck, there's God knows what, all of which needs to be kind of cleared away. It's a bit like cleaning a dirty windscreen, or as the Buddhists would say, it's a bit like cleaning a crystal vase. That, right, you can clean the top of the vase and you can get a nice shiny, spout, but at the bottom is the thick sediment. And that is often what manifests in our liver, with stuff like heavy metals or toxic substances. And, so when we do those kinds of clearings, I have the privilege of seeing what emerges from behind the yuck and the toxicity. And often that's a really beautiful process to finally see somebody. And then if I'm able to reflect that back to the client, often what happens is they're like, oh my gosh, you saw this and this and this. You're like the fourth person who said that to me when I had that healing, or I saw this person. And it's just like, we find it difficult to believe how wonderfully amazing we all are, actually. And I think that that's what Elder is encouraging us now, is to open our eyes, not be afraid, make sure that we've got ourselves in our hearts, centered, present, aligned, which is also another energy of Artemisia's, with a clean terrain, with hopefully most of those murky corners kind of illuminated more so that the stuff can be released. And Elder is offering us the opportunity, I feel now, to really see the truth of who we are, each and every one of us, and then to see how us as a being, how do I step out in the world, and who do I want to connect with? Who are my tribe? And I'm seeing this more and more in other groups on YouTube or Rumble. I can see other groups of people with similar energies or motifs to what we're doing here with the plants, but in a slightly different space or slightly different direction. And I can see that there are many people out there working hard right now to reveal the truth. Many brave people, many people getting banned repeatedly, I think, across all of the channels. But also in our own more subtle ways, we're doing work like this with our immersions and summits, and maybe bringing through a more, at least on the face of it, genteel energy. But actually the truth of the plants is that, like, these guys are super powerful. And as Bella was saying earlier, it's like you can do this process without the plants, but I think it will take a lot longer and be a lot less enjoyable, and somehow probably a little more challenging. And what I love about working with plants is that they, like Elder, they can come into our field, read us, and go, okay, he needs to do this and this, but he can't see it, so I'm going to bring it out for him. So this is what me and Peter were talking about on the Elder call, which is Elder is given a tag of being toxic and poisonous, certainly within some quarters. And Pete ventured a point that I also had wondered about before, which is like, well, why is it sometimes you can eat the elderberries raw? Because apparently if you eat them raw, they're more toxic than if you cook them. And how is it sometimes if you eat them raw, they can make you vomit? Sometimes it can make you have diarrhea, and other times nothing. And so what we're starting to understand, and I love what you said at the beginning about there are no rules anymore, is we're starting to understand that plants aren't toxic and want to poison us because that's what they want to do. Sometimes they might put some level of poison into us to help release something. very, very different concept to poisonous Western medicines like chemotherapy, for example, which is incredibly poisonous to the human system, and many other medications, particularly some of the big ones that have been offered over the last couple of years, really don't seem to have any health-giving benefits in them at all. But when we work with medicines, and we're coming up to the year at the end of the sequence too, and there's only a very small part of the yew tree that's not toxic. So I'm wondering, people are already messaging me, how are we going to make a tea or a tincture from yew toxic? And I'm like, I don't know yet, but I'm hoping the yew is going to tell me sometime between now and December the 13th. But this is also a part of the process that I've gone through with the plants over the last years, particularly with dandelion, which is, don't get, you might perceive that there's something you need to think about. Just try to be in the moment and understand that what you've been told or what we can do is not necessarily what you've been given before. So the elder, I think, is really trying to break down these belief systems around why a tree would poison us. Why would an immunomodulating plant like elder decide to suddenly make us vomit when it's communicated with our body and decided that's what I need? Is it because it wants to make me feel sick and ill and put me in hospital? Or
Well, I mean, this is the whole thing. I mean, my philosophy, my knowing around illness per se is not the same as a lot of the Western medicine's view on it. I mean, yes, for 2 weeks now, I've been purging. I've been purging with what people would have called cold and flu symptoms. But as it came on, it was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting that it's happening now. That's interesting that it's happening on my chest and my throat. And lots of other people were saying similar things. And it's like, okay, so, I mean, I went down, I was guided to go down the homeopathic route and to treat homeopathically, which, assisted massively in dealing with a lot of the symptoms that I was going through. But my attitude was, okay, this is serving me. This is serving me because I'm clearing stuff. So all of that stuff that I'm still holding on to in my heart field, hook on to that mucus and I can hook you up now.
Right.
And I can clear you up and out. And it's a very physical process, but you're leaving. And so I kind of view that in the same way as vomiting and diarrhea. If you're being caused to vomit or to die, you're clearing. Whatever the way, your body is an amazing vehicle for self-equilibrium if we allow it.
Right.
So it's like it's going to do whatever it needs to do to kind of clear whatever distortion has built up in the field in whatever way it can. So yeah, I mean, if I take a plant medicine, it makes me vomit, it's because there was something in there that I really needed to release.
Right. And it's again, if we look at the astrology and look back to the Libra equinox and the Libra new moon, that we're very close to each other. In fact, if we go back over the last few years, there's been lots of very powerful pinch points, moments of choice, pivotal moments where we can choose, am I going to go this way or am I going to go this way? And I really saw with the Libra energy that we were being asked, or even invited, maybe is a better word, to choose. Am I going to go more fractal, organic, reconnect to Mother Nature, because we are nature. This is somewhat part of nature, but it's not part of a fractal existence. It's it's made with finite resources, and so it's always a diminishing experience. But with Mother Nature and the plants, we're on a more fractal, expanding energy. And I really saw that we would be given the choice to choose that kind of, again, the astrology comes in where we've got Saturn square Uranus in Aquarius and Taurus, Aquarius being the age that we're about to come into. And we can see that Aquarius could be AI, could be cyborg, could be transhuman. Yeah. But with Uranus in Taurus, as Pam and I talked about, and it's come out many times, is we're being given the opportunity to go quantum, the Aquarian piece, Saturn, a new structure, but working with the earth and working with the plants. And this is where I totally concur with what Bella was saying earlier, is that, that this is the future that we are being given now at the quantum level with the plant technology. It's a choice. And again, we had this beautiful Venus star point that was on the 22nd at 29 degrees of Libra, which has been a big part of the astrology, right?
Bang on my
And
Jupiter. I mean, I've got so
okay.
many planets at 29 degrees. It hit my Pluto, Mars, Moon, Saturn, and it was bang on my Jupiter, which was
Wow.
interesting because, yeah, because I was clearing right up until that point, and then on Saturday I felt great. It's just like,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, likewise, I also have Mercury at 29 degrees of Libra opposing my Chiron at 29 degrees of Aries. I have North Node at 3 degrees of Scorpio, Sun 5 degrees of Scorpio, blah, blah. It's boom time, right? So, but like what you said, we can either get bent out of shape by our own astrology, or if we work with it and say, okay, this is a great opportunity to release those things that no longer serve me. I'm happy to purge out. And we should never be afraid of the purge.
Yeah.
That's what I think holds us back. And I saw this so many times in ayahuasca ceremonies, that there'd almost be some sense of pride as to who wouldn't vomit first. There was some sort of ego macho thing that I saw in some circles, which is like, I'm I don't vomit on ayahuasca. I've done my work. It's like, really, buddy? Are you sure? Like, are you sure about that? 3 hours later, dude's got his head in the bucket, absolutely vomiting through it, like he's never done it before. But there would always be that point where somebody, it's a bit like going to a nightclub in the old days. It'd have to be somebody who would get up on the dance floor and dance first.
Yeah.
And it would normally require somebody who was less inhibited. And I saw this many times in healing spaces. And I feel actually right now that we are, and again, throat chakra stuff, I feel like the vomit is here and humanity is not quite able to let it go. Many of us can sense that we're on the edge of something big, that we need something big, we need to purge, we need to cleanse, but humanity on the whole is absolutely, it's quite a phrase, shitting itself, I think. Maybe with the purge, literally, we'll see. But, once it's out, it's out. And that's where the medicines, the ayahuascas, the tobaccos, the elders, and many other plants who have purgative qualities, it's not that they want to make us sick. No, like, why would they want to do that? Why would my higher self let them come in and do that? No, they want to help us. They want us to get stuff out for sure. So I see that other people in the chat box are also saying same symptoms. To be honest, even here at this end, I'm also suffering a little bit like this. I've checked my field. I cannot find anything energetically in my field that is causing this. I haven't got sick with a flu for several decades, and yet everyone I know is suffering the same thing. So I'm thinking that maybe this is a collective group purging. And maybe those of us who are able to do the channeling work or that kind of stuff, as I know you do too, Lou, as do I, including some people, maybe it's coming to those of us that can handle it, because those that can't, it's getting stuck. So I definitely, don't recommend taking on other people's stuff. But if you're feeling that, there may be a reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, the channeled transmission that came through on my live yesterday was, going back to what you were saying about, we were kind of, I saw it as we were held in this dome, this energetic dome that was kind of keeping us all in this lower frequency. And that, that's now gone. There's been a lot of clearing of what you called the matrices and, things like that. And so that's now lifted. So we can. And I saw that those who are consciously doing the work are becoming the clear channels, which is something that I've said from the age of like 3 years old. That we are becoming the clear channels that the light can come into. And so it's not surprising for me, not that I've consciously said, yes, I'm going to clear for humanity, but it's not surprising because I can, and because I have so much Scorpio in me, I'm not afraid of the shadow work. I'm not afraid to purge. I will walk that path. I will walk through the fire to come out the other end, because I know we always do.
Yes.
So many times in my life, I've walked through the metaphorical fire, but I've always come out the other side, and it's always been so much better and clearer. So, because we are doing it, even whether or not we've kind of consciously said, yes, I'm into this, I'm up for it or not, it doesn't matter. It's basically, well, like you were saying, it's kind of realizing the strength that we have in us and getting to know ourselves through our ability to clear and purge. And that's something else that, it's kind of getting to know that hidden aspect of you. But very much I agree with, we're being called to step into our magnificence, to see our magnificence, to see our light, to see the perfection that we are. And that was something that came through on a shamanic weekend for me not long back. it was very much that message. So it's interesting that you've brought that through from elders' perspective, because yeah, I was given that a month or so ago, and that's what I've been kind of processing and working with quite consciously. And it's hard. It's so much harder to see our magnificence than it is to see the shadow.
Right. That's a strange thing. And of course, the only thing that casts a shadow is the light.
Yes.
So that's always something to remember too. But I totally agree with everything you're saying. And yeah, Scorpio season, whether you have Scorpio energy or not, is a time when we can dare to look beyond the veil, look into the world of the dead, the other world, the world of the ancestors, but also because there is so much fear in the world right now, those of us that don't have fear and frequencies of what's in the world and all of those kinds of things. And one of the beautiful motifs about Elder is that her trunk or her stem is hollow. It's hollow. And of course you should never burn Elder, but I would like to suggest that this hollow bone aspect of Elder is because she is that clearest of clear channels, and she shows us that when you have that clear channel connected to your higher mind or your unconditional heart space, that we can allow pretty much anything to pass through. So I know that you don't have any fear in channeling yucky stuff for other people, and neither do I. I wasn't always like that, believe me. But certainly when I was in the jungle being taken apart by ayahuasca, I was afraid of quite a few things, mostly my own stuff, as it turned out. But that process of cleaning and clearing and vanquishing the lower frequencies, the debilitating frequencies, particularly the one of fear, which is something that's coming up a lot in already the Elder Immersion discussions. Like every other frequency, joy, happiness, bliss, fear, guilt, shame, all of those lower frequencies, they're all choices that we can either choose to keep holding on to, or we can choose to let go of. And again, Libra energy really set up the space for us to start questioning, do I have fear? Am I afraid of what's going on in the world? If I am, let me start investigating that rather than projecting it back out and blaming everybody else for things that I don't have any control over. And this is something that people often say. It's like, well, I can't control what Putin's going to do or Biden's going to do or blah, 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 any of these people, whatever they're up to. That's really not clear either. But it's like, that's not the point. We're not meant to be dealing with that. What we're being shown to do is like, okay, put all of that stuff way away from yourself. It's not your concern. What's your concern? Is like, how are you doing right now? How do you maintain your terrain when surrounded by a sea of chaos? Is it that you just buckle and go inwards and succumb to the chaotic energies and other people's ideas and narratives and start letting them do things to you that maybe you probably didn't want? Or do you go, you know what, no, actually I'm in charge here, and who gave you jurisdiction over me? And the more that we step up, and I've seen this with myself and many other people, the more that we step up and go, you know what, no, I'm not signing up to that. Then actually those energies, they can't do an awful lot about it. They can only manipulate us from the 4D emotional body space of humans. That's where we can be got. That's where we can be made to feel afraid or guilty or shameful or any of those unhelpful things. And that's why we need to work with plants like the Artemisias to help clear the terrain. And they also show us where we have those emotional vulnerabilities. So nobody's saying it's easy. I'm not saying that at all. And I know that there are many difficult things out there and probably many things to feel fearful about. But I would like to suggest that once we vanquish those frequencies from our field, life starts to look a little different. And this is where Dandelion is so good. It's like, look, once you step out of that space and you just jump with me into the abyss with trust, just see what happens. Yeah. And having been through that process over the last 12 months, I can say, yes, it's a little scary. And certainly it's taken me on the most wild, crazy, magical journey ever. But at the end of it, 12 months down the road, I'm probably in the best place in my life I've ever been. Maybe even the best place I've been in a number of lives, to be honest. But that's what can happen when we step into a place of trust.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what you said about, nothing can actually happen to us within our field, whether it's within the unseen realm or within the seen realm, without our consent. And a lot of people struggle with that. But, even if everything is mirrored. So even if we look at the physical reality, government, control of the mind, govern the mind meant, they govern with consent. They are public servants. So, the wordology and everything, it's all there. we have given them our power to rule, to control our minds, to tell us what to do and how to live and how to be with their legal and laws and things. But we've consented because we don't stand there and say, hang on a minute, no. But this is what I feel we're all being called to really reclaim, is our own power, our own responsibility for self. I don't need anybody to govern me. I am a powerful creator being. I govern myself, and I can choose what's happening for me. And I find one of the interesting things that's been coming up a lot recently is people who have, because a lot of what I work with people on is, energy management, taking responsibility for your own energetic body, yourself. And that's what reclaiming your power is. But a lot of people have seemingly come under attack, is one way to look at it, allowed energies into their field through very, very subtle means. And I see that happening a lot recently. And again, I think that this is leading into the Scorpio season. This is leading into the kind of elder aspect and the elder wisdom. For us to kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, where is my back door? Where's my vulnerability? Where have I actually said yes when in every other setting I'm saying no? It's and allowing ourselves to really get clear on our own field integrity, because it may be in some situations and settings that you would have thought was fine, and you assumed it was okay, and therefore you let your guard down a bit, kind of thing. And that's what I've been finding a lot. I just wondered if that kind of resonated with what you've been seeing and experiencing.
100%, Lou. Yeah, absolutely. And even in my own life, I've spent a decade or more doing deep inner work, very, very long process for me, a lot of karma, a lot of unresolved aspects from my other timelines. I've had to have a word with a few characters. It's like, you guys left me a lot to deal with here. And they're like, well, we know, but whatever. There's a few sort of shame-faced folks in other timelines. But what I've seen very clearly is that wherever I have even a small doorway now, because I've worked on the big doorways for many years, and being a medicine man, I can't have doorways because otherwise I leave myself open. But wherever there is a small chink, and actually what's often happened in the last year or so, it's not been my doorways, it's been people around me who've got doorways. And when we work, as we do a lot in the shadow realms, and we work with large amounts of light, we are often subjected more so than other folks to having the opposing forces trying to undo our work or interfere with it, because we're directly attacking their work. This is the battle between light and dark in that context. And so what I started to observe was, particularly over the last couple of years, if I had people around me who hadn't done their work, they started channeling unhelpful energies that then did come to me. And so I then had to start being very discerning about my boundaries, about who was in the same frequency as me and who wasn't. And it was tough. And I had to let go of a lot of people. But those people, and again, I have to thank my teacher from the Amazon for this. He said to me, on the path, Davyd, you will find down the road that you will look left and right, and you will see there are some people with you, and those are the people that will continue to walk the journey with you. And then you'll look over your shoulder and see many people you thought were on the journey with you, straggling behind, asking you to wait for them. He said, if you wait for them, he said, they will take you down with them. He said, those people are not going to come on the journey with you. And I thought, wow, that's kind of cold. Roll on a few years, I suddenly understood what he meant is just like, put the energy into the people who are taking the journey with you and support each other. But those who are holding you back or weighing you down will pull you under. And I'm now seeing very clearly that we're in that situation. I understand, as with many things, that my very erudite Scorpio teacher actually shared with me. And again, he was a very profound guy, because he's shown me both in light and dark by being an amazing Zen master at his higher mind, but also actually being not such a great guy in the 3D by attacking a lot. He actually showed me brilliantly where all of my doorways were. And I have to thank him. And this is, again, where being non-dual is very good, because he really showed me what he had done to show me where my doorways were. And I'm like, thank you, brother, for taking that on your shoulders to be in that way, so that I would learn. So again, this is, I think, in that way, he was probably one of my best teachers for breaking down the idea of duality, and particularly who's good and who's bad. In the end, it's all part of the same story. But for sure, yeah, I can see exactly what you're saying. That resonates.
And absolutely. And for me, it's all done without any judgment. you know, and it's like respecting another person's path. And no matter
Yes.
who they are or how much you may love them or, you know, want them to be taking the same path as you, if they're on a different path, they're on a different path, or you're on a different path. So respect your path, respect their path, and let each and every person kind of walk their own, in that loving divine neutrality. It's not as cold as it may initially seem and sound, but I also feel that that's a big part of the kind of Scorpio season that we're entering into. You know, it's like you're here to walk your path. That's your responsibility. That's it. That's where your responsibility starts and ends. I'm just aware of the time.
I couldn't agree more, Louise. I'm glad you said that. So I just pulled up the chat box. Did you want to go into some of the questions, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just going to look. There's no Q&A in the Q&A box, so I was just trying to scan and read what people were saying. Yeah, Jenny was saying that she's always had an interest in herbs. She thinks that she may have been a herbalist witch in past life. I think many of us were, to be fair. I've definitely got hedge witch history in my lifetime, but I don't have that wisdom in this, unfortunately. Would you know why in this life, if she takes any energetic medicine like herbs and black flowers, she gets some severe pain in her lower left leg? It's been happening for over 15 years.
I wouldn't necessarily want to. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to say why exactly is the pain in the left leg, but I would definitely say that the medicines are alluding to something. Whenever I take medicine, something comes up. The classic one I've been sharing recently is coffee. Now, I often used to think that it was coffee that gave me accelerated heart rates, or it was bad coffee that gave me stomachache. What I came to realize very recently was that the coffee only gives me a stomachache when I picked up a particular type of entity that's in certain offered medications. That gives me indigestion, it gives me bloating, sometimes gives me diarrhea, but often would give me stomachache. And the moment that I would have a cup of coffee in the last like 6 months, and I get that feeling of like, oh no, not another bad coffee. It's like, oh no, there is no such thing as bad coffee. Let me just check in. And this is where this little beauty, the pendulum, is really useful. And so again, also with Santa Maria, the cannabis plant, many people express getting paranoia or anxiety, that the plant brings that on. It's like, no, the plant's not doing that. The plant is showing you that there are energies around you, either in your own field or those that you're with, which are making you feel anxious. So what I've come to understand, looping back to what we said at the beginning again, is that the plants are always trying to show us something. And even potatoes, nightshades. I talked about this with Rebecca on one of our food as medicine shows, as she was into myth busting. She said there's this idea that the nightshades give us swollen ankles or inflammation. It's like, no. They're showing that there's already a problem there, and they're bringing it, inflaming it into our awareness so that we can take action to deal with it. So yeah, I wouldn't want to necessarily say what exactly is the reason, Jenny, that is going on. But maybe if you want to reach out to me in chat, maybe through an email, we can maybe find a different way to look at that.
Yeah, and I think that it's like you say, it's just, for me, it's always shifting perspective. You know, I mean, if we look at this equals this, well, that might have been true for 10 years ago, but it's no longer true now. And it's allowing yourself to have that wider perspective on what's going on and just start asking all these different questions. You know, okay, where have I been? How have I been living my life for the last 15 years? And, you know, if I'm taking these energetic medicines in whatever form, and they're showing me this and they're showing me this, okay, am I going in and asking them the question, okay, you're showing me this, can we go into a deeper conversation about it, you know, and what can I do about it? Because that's one of the things that I loved about what you were saying about the plant kingdom. It doesn't just show things up to you. You can have that deeper conversation and it'll say, okay, we're guiding you to do this, this, or this. You know, it's such a wider frame of reference around things, I find, than you know, the kind of lab created.
Don't even get me started on those. we're into the last minutes. We get into that conversation.
I
It could be
know.
another hour, but yes, 100% agree. And I'd like to maybe suggest, as I know we're about to wrap up, that today is Scorpio new moon eclipse. I know the eclipse has already passed over you guys in the UK. I think it woke me up this morning fairly early. I definitely got a jolt of something. But today is the day that we can make powerful prayers. And what I've seen is that when we make powerful prayers on the new moons over the last 2 years, if they're good ones, whoosh, they come true by the full moon later that month. And right now we have Scorpio. So I'd like to suggest that if we work well with the new moon energy, and this is Scorpio, so it's about death and rebirth, letting go, all of these things, we can let go of our old belief systems. We can let go of the garbage that we've been served up in almost every area of our life, particularly around medicine and health and healing. And we can start to say, you know what, Yabu shucks to you. I'm going to talk to the plants and I'm going to find out what's going on for me with a conversation with a being who actually genuinely cares about me and doesn't want to sell me a bunch of crappy medication. Which I would dare to suggest is sometimes what goes on in other aspects of the healing communities. So, you know, today is that day when we can make those prayers. And, you know, the astrology shows that between now and the end of the year, this is the big piece. Whatever is going to change our world is going to happen between now and the end of the year. I know that some of us are kind of like, really? Is it going to come now or what? Finally, I've been waiting several thousand years for this, I feel, maybe even longer. But, you know, the trick is not to be afraid. Scorpio gives us the power and the energy to transform. That's the great gift of being Scorpio, is that we have that kind of tantric ability to transform energies, anything we want. And right now, particularly if we work with an elder who can transform instantly, all we have to do is be brave enough to go, you know what, let me see, finally show me what it is that's going on for me, that's no longer serving me, that's causing me pains in my body, whatever it might be. Please show me what it is and then help me to release it. I don't want to carry any more. I don't want to be a victim anymore. I don't want to be any of those things, right? So today is an amazing day. I love Scorpio season. It's wild. It's sometimes a little funky. It's definitely Halloween. But there's nothing to be afraid of. There really isn't. And I would welcome in those energies and work with them in the most transformational ways possible.
Absolutely. I mean, I know something that came through for me over the last few weeks has been, you know, it's like this year has been a ride. It really has. It's been a ride and a half. But, you know, hold on to your hats because it's definitely not over yet. And I think it's going to get really juicy between now and the end of the year. One of the things that and that's nothing, you know, I'm not fear mongering. I'm not putting anything out there because I honestly, I'm not attached to what it looks like. I'm just excited for a shift because I have got Scorpio rising. One of the things that I just wanted to end on is I know the elder immersion is ongoing now. And I know the dandelion and the artemisia has finished. Now, if people are interested, because we've obviously been talking about all of the three that are kind of either current or have been, do they have to do the whole kind of dandelion, artemisia and elder? Or if they're drawn, can they jump in on elder? Or, you know, do they have to do it in the order that the plants have given? Or is it just something that they can kind of tune into?
Well, very good question, and many people have asked the same one. I have two approaches to answering this. First of all is that it's super intuitive, and I never tell anybody exactly what to do with plants because it's between the person and the plant. All we can do with our work with the immersions of quantum plant healing is point in the direction of stuff. The reason the plants came through in the way that hopefully I explained is that dandelion did what it did, artemisia did what it did. If we have already worked with those plants or got them down, or we've done a lot of inner work, we may not need to get centered and aligned and clean because we may already have done that work, in which case, if you're feeling the call to elder, fine, go with that. If some part of you is telling you maybe not as present or as aligned or as clean as I'd like to be, I would suggest doing those work first, because the elder can be a little uncompromising. She expects you to have stepped up. She's already said, hey, there's the pathway. If you're going to step in with me right now, no problem. But whatever's going to come up is going to come up. And if you haven't done some of the earlier work and haven't got centered and aligned, haven't got into your heart, maybe elder might be a little tough. I spent many, many years waiting to approach the elder mother. In fact, I waited until she said, okay, you're ready to come and work with me now. Now, as we've said, we are running out of time as this great process unfolds, but we do have special offers on the Dandelion and the Artemisia, either individually or as a bundle. Even though the live immersions have finished, many people have gone back already and done the Dandelion and the Artemisia, have now stepped into Elder. Some people are doing them concurrently. The plants are all quite different, particularly Dandelion and Artemisia's energy is very different. And I've talked about the balancing qualities of solar, lunar, masculine, feminine, internal, external between those plants. So those very personal plants have helped us get this more personal terrain clear. And then we're going into the more transpersonal trees. The oldest and most wisest of all, the Elder Mother and the Yggdrasil, the tree of eternity, who has seen everything that humans have ever done. 260 million years that being has been here on the planet. So he knows a thing or two. So I would suggest it's good to do Dandelion and Artemisia, but as I've seen from many people over the last year, they'd already been working with Dandelion since the beginning of the year. And it's just incredible to see how, when I have conversations with those people, they're able to express what I know is pure Dandelion energy, because I can feel it in their fields and in their way of being. It's like, no, they're down, they're centered, they're present. And because they're present, they're in a place of trust. And also because they're in a place of trust, they don't really have any fear. So it's, it's often backwards and forwards like this. So we can, even though we weren't able to do it for the live immersion, Lou, we can definitely organize a special voucher code for people who want to do the Elder immersion once it's finished as a live.
Okay, you just broke up a bit there, but yeah, I think the gist of that was you can do a discount code for anybody who wants to do the Elder immersion after it's finished the live.
Yes, exactly.
Fabulous.
And also just want to say thanks to everybody in the comments. I am just scanning these as I think Lou as well we're talking. Yeah. Please do feel free to reach out. Please do check out the website quantumplанthealing.com. And I saw there's a couple other questions there from somebody. Yes, Dandelion's very grounding. Totally concur with that. The roots of Dandelion are amazing. And yeah, a lot about the human heart lines and narratives. Again, Dandelion often is considered to be a plant that cleanses the liver. But what I found was that, and this came through on the transmissions on that immersion, is that all of the other organs in Chinese medicine are in service to the emperor, and the heart is the emperor. And actually, when we think about the heart of the Leo being this very sunny aspect of the leonine, serious beings, Dandelion is very much part of that family. So he helps the heart to illuminate itself. So yeah, this is the time for heart healing for sure.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And in the UK, I mean, you can just come to my garden. It's a dandelion fest. But there's so many different ways to work with them. That's the other thing that I really love. There are so many different ways to work with these plant spirits. Yes, you can use the essences, but in certain areas in the world, they're readily available. You can work with them in so many different ways, and it's just allowing yourself to be guided, as you say. Right, I think we will wrap it up there because of the timing and the internet connection. I think we've done a marvellous job to keep it as steady as it has been.
I know that it's glitching on both sides, but of course this information is exactly the sort of thing that gets interfered with. So yeah, thank you, Lou. I know that we've both been doing a strong job holding this call, and long may that continue with our other work. And I hope that it continues to hold for the rest of your summit, because I know what you're doing is really important too.
Yeah, my heart is large. I can hold this container.
That's lovely. I can feel it from here for sure.
Okay, well, love you so much, Davyd, and you are very welcome to join us again. Maybe let's see where we are after on the flip side in 2023.
I feel as a final note that once we get beyond winter solstice, the return of the light on Christmas Day is the day that I keep being shown as when things will finally start to open back out. Doesn't mean that it's all going to be hunky-dory immediately, but I think the astrology shows us that this is the most difficult part right now. And once we've purged, then we're into the cleanup job and the healing. And that's a much better space to be in. We're in the more difficult place right now. But 23, 24, I feel like we're going to start to step into that more exciting space that we both know is coming.
Absolutely. And my birthday's on the 12/12 gateway, so I'm holding the light for everybody on that day to get us to the end.
Wow. Good. Thank you, lovely.
All right then. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us live. Thank you for all your comments and everything. I will be uploading the audio replay as soon as we've done, but the video, I must apologize, takes forever with my internet, and I have paid for a rather good internet as well. So it's just the way it is with the energies that we're experiencing. So again, many thanks, Davyd. So much love to you.
Likewise,
I
back
look
at
forward
you.
to connecting with you again sometime. And thank you to everybody else. We have Peter Tong tomorrow, which I'm super excited about as well. Again, going to talk about the eclipse energies with the gene codes and the gene keys. So much love to you all. Thank you ever so much, everybody. Much love. Bye.
Ciao, everyone. Take care. New moon blessings.